We don't have to require that of you. It's an expense we can take away, but also it doesn't mean that you don't have to dress warmly to be out on deck, because of course you absolutely do. So one of the first things you need to know is that of course your extremities, or those things furthest from your core and body heat, are going to be what gets cold first. That means your hands and your feet. And we're gonna start with my hands because I don't feel like I can do anything in the moment, but some nice good mittens are a really good way to start. But did you know that you can double up the layers of those mittens to the point where you're actually far more insulated? I like to have my shells on the outside of my mittens and then fingerless gloves underneath so that I can operate my camera, my phone, as carefully as I can. Remember never to hang those things over the edge of the ship because the winds could whip up at any moment and those phones could blow literally right out of your hands and into the sea, and we don't want that to happen. So we want mittens, fingerless mitts if you've got them. Whatever your layers you brought are going to be enough. It's just a matter of which order you put them on and what's going to make you the most comfortable. Next is going to be your exterior layer. Your exterior layer is going to be your windbreak and your waterbreak. It needs to be both windproof and waterproof ideally, because the saying in Antarctica and everywhere else we adventure is that there is no bad weather, only poor clothing choices. And so instead, we layer ourselves up. But your outermost layer is what's going to protect you when that weather changes quickly, because it does. It could be beautiful, sunny, bright, and kind of too warm for all of your layers. And then all of a sudden, it could be blustery, it could be snowing, it could be raining, it could be anything of the above. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna put on all the layers you brought with you, and I mean all of them. Then make sure that you get to spend as much time on open deck as you possibly can, because if you want to see those wildlife sightings, if you want to find that favorite iceberg, you need to spend a lot of time on deck when we're down in the beauty of Antarctica. So we're just going to lay that coat down, and it's going to be my catch-all for these layers. So our next layer underneath our waterproof and our windproof layer can be both of those things as well, but it's an insulative layer. And we're gonna use our insulative layers to keep us the most warm. This is the best jacket you've brought, is gonna be your next layer. And ideally, we don't want this layer to be cotton. We don't want any of our layers to be cotton if we can help it, because cotton is the only fabric that when it gets wet, actually keeps you colder. It holds that moisture into your body and doesn't allow it to wick away, or it doesn't actually warm up with your body heat. If you're wearing wool or you're wearing synthetic clothing, even wet, it still keeps you warm. But in the adventuring community, we have a saying that says cotton kills, because as it gets cold, it gets really cold to you and keeps you cold. Of course, we don't have to worry about things like hypothermia on the ship. We can simply step inside and warm up, but it's the risk of losing our experience on deck that is so unfortunate. So we're gonna keep layering up. I have seen you all in a lot of already puffy jackets. As you walk around the open decks doing your morning laps or anything, they've started to come out, and that is the best thing to do. And the reason we do that is it's another insulative layer. And layers are key because they allow you to unlayer if you become too warm, or layer back up if you are not too warm. Now, of course, the top layers are easy to show you all, but it's much harder to show you the layers I would be wearing on the bottom, and so I've done this. And so instead of just wearing one pair of pants, we know to layer up on top, but layering up underneath is also really important. If you haven't brought long johns or long underwear, that's okay, because these, while they look like long johns, are actually just leggings. Leggings are still really in fashion. Yoga pants that are synthetic are actually a really wonderful insulative layer. So however many pairs you can fit under your roomiest pair of pants is gonna keep you that much warmer, give you that much more time out on the open deck. And then, of course, you want to keep your head really warm. We lose a lot of our body temperature through the tops of our heads, and so go ahead and double that up too, because it's going to keep you so warm, and it looks really fashionable. I always joke that when I see you out on deck in the worst of the weather, I don't want to see people on deck. I want to see the decks full, but I don't want to see the people. Instead, I just want to see people-shaped blobs. That's the idea when we're out there. We need to look cozy, we need to look comfortable, and those are going to be the best memories and the best pictures that we have going forward. So we're going to layer up those scarves, making sure that it's windproof and weatherproof as we go along. And so as we do all of those things, anything that you've got that's knitted, synthetic, that's going to be really wonderful. I like to show off this sweater because my sister knit it for me. I know, she's pretty darn good at what she does. And of course it is incredibly warm, which is why it's coming off next, because I'm dying. It is so much too warm in all of these layers. But we've talked about our tops, we've talked about what goes underneath, but of course our extremities are not just our hands that have double layers, but it's our feet too. And that means that we're gonna wear our most comfortable pair of shoes so that we can stand for as long as we possibly can all day long. But our most comfortable pair of shoes are actually going to include several pairs of socks. And so if you don't have roomiest shoes, you don't have to tie them all the way tight that day. Instead, see how many pairs of socks you can fit under your shoes, because that's going to help you, again, stay out on deck as well as you possibly can. Now, tomorrow in Ushuaia, you probably won't need all of these layers. On the first trip down this season, people were walking around in Ushuaia sweltering in all their layers, because this talk is for Antarctica, not Ushuaia. Instead, step outside onto the open deck tomorrow, see what you think you'll need, but again, a windproof and waterproof layer is always a good idea when we're in port. And so as we do this, we want to make sure that we're getting the best out of our experience, which is why we dress up in this way, to make sure that everything we do actually goes ahead and keeps us the warmest possible. And so we need to keep this warm because, again, and lastly, it is our experience that is at risk. We are traveling in the lap of luxury. Making sure that we come to Antarctica is an incredible privilege. But we want to get every second out of this amazing moment that we're going to have all together. And so if we do that, if we pile on all of these layers, it can make a real difference into how we experience this time in Antarctica. Have I made my point?